What's up, chat? I'm just going to do a brief introduction while my computer reboots because I just installed Docker. Brand new, fresh install. So we're going to go through this together. Welcome to my intimate room at the wherever I am, Virginia, something. The White House is right over there. So we're going to talk about Docker. We're going to go over the stuff that I really wish I knew when I first got into Docker. Would have reduced a lot of headache and a lot of time. Why are we going to do that? Because Docker is an awesome way to quickly and easily spin up stuff, especially for pen testing. Labs, they come up really easily. You don't fill your system with junk. You turn them off when you're done. It's pretty straightforward. Everything that we do is relatively portable in Docker. I'll go over some stuff is more portable than others. What that means is I can make a text file and share it with you. So I can make a text file, share it with you. I can literally send you an iMessage with the contents of how to build a whole lab, and then you can run one command and have it running. Once you get the hang of it, Docker, you can also make your own, and that's actually really powerful as well. So without further ado, let's dive in. Let's dig in. Y'all know and love this screen. Let's see, do I have Docker running? Docker version. Look at that, I've got Docker running. Cool. So that's the basics of it, Docker version. There is a desktop app. Do not use it yet. It will screw you up. I'm not saying that because learning the command line is easier or better. I'm not saying that because learning the command line is more altruistic or gives you more street cred. Until you know the fundamentals, the Docker desktop will confuse you, and then you will suck at Dockering. So we're going to get through this on here first. First things up, how do I do this? What do I do? Docker, and then followed by a command. I was hitting tab there. Docker help gives you the list of the Docker commands. You can read it. The documentation's fantastic, but let's start with Docker run. I think it's hello world. Look at this. Pull access denied. Repository does not exist or may require Docker run. Let's try Docker run hello world. Hey, look at that. You saw that? It did some stuff. It downloaded and it ran hello from Docker. This message shows that your installation appears to be working properly. That's it. That's it. Docker run and then a thing. You can get a little more creative. It would be hello world : and then a version if I had a version that I wanted to do, 1.0 or 2.3. What it actually is not a version, but it's called a tag. So that's a tag, and that's something else that's really important to learn as well. So if I ended up doing something like Docker run Ubuntu, I don't know exactly what it is right now, 1804, 2201, you'll want to learn the tags for it. A lot of times you'll also use latest. It's not always what you want, but you can also use latest as well. So one of the first things we want to do, let's try Docker run. What can we use? Nginx. So it's going to download a Docker container of Nginx. This is downloading from Docker Hub. I think there's a couple others baked in. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's downloading from a place called Docker Hub. So if you want to learn more, go to dockerhub.com. You can see the write-ups for what all this stuff is. And it's now going to do its Docker-y thing, start some processes, and eventually I should be looking at Nginx. So a few things have happened here. Docker has ran, but I didn't really tell it enough to run properly. So Docker's running, and this is sitting here at a worker process to start Nginx, but I'm missing a few key components. One of the big ones that I'm missing is telling what port to run on. So what I need to do is I need to map communication. So I hit Control-C to cancel it. I need to map communication from Docker run to what port I want to use. From the command line, it's just P. This maps port. So what port do I want on my host? Let's use 80 because I'm already, we'll make it 1-to-1. So if I run Docker run port 8080, so that means map 80 on my system to 80 inside the container. This right here is what I wish somebody explained to me very early on. Mapping from in the host, so my computer's port 80, to 80 inside the system. We're going to get more complex with that too, but let's try that. Docker run, oops, what did I do? Wah. The order matters. The order matters. All right, right off the bat, I don't think you can see it on the screen record, but I had a Windows firewall pop up, and it's saying, hey, are you sure you want to run Docker desktop and allow this firewall when you're on a public hotel Wi-Fi? And I'm going to say yes, because I live dangerously. So I've now got Docker running port 80 on Nginx. And if I hit localhost 80, I get welcome to Nginx on this screen. I think you're only seeing the console, but you're seeing me hit it. So I'll refresh it a few times. So you're seeing the live console of Docker. Now, you don't always want to run like live, like you don't want to take up your console. A lot of times you want to start this more like a service. So if I stop that, I can stop it again. And I can even check what's running. Docker PS, nothing running. So Docker, let's go up again. Docker run, port 8080, Nginx. And this time I'm going to do -D. This means run detached. In other words, execute this command and then vanish into the background. Herp within a derp. I actually never do this on command line. I never do it via Docker run. I'll show you what I do in a little bit. Yeah, the flags all have to go before the command that we're running. Nginx. Let's try that again. There we go. So we got this big string, says it's working, but how do I know what's happening? Docker PS. See, now I can see it. I've got a container ID. I've got an image, the command created, all kinds of stuff. And it even shows me my port mappings. And then it gives it a random name, and in this case, it's Vigorous Volhard. So I don't want that. I want to do Docker stop, and I can do this by a few different ways. I can do it by its name, Vigorous Volhard, but that's actually really awkward, and there's two other ways to do it. So we'll run it one more time. We'll look at Docker PS again. The other way you can do it is by just enough letters of its container ID to be unique. And this is important to remember because there's a lot of ways of identifying Docker. And so we want to see this time it's got a different name, Peaceful Bartik. So I want to do Docker stop. And this time I'm going to do enough of that, D2236, close enough. As long as it's unique and knows what I'm talking about. Docker PS, see, it stopped. Now, one more. So we've got Docker run. We've mapped the ports. We've told it to run detach. Now, if you remember anything from Linux or any command line whatsoever, usually one hyphen is a single letter, two hyphens means a combination of letters. The reason being, if you only do one, you can daisy chain things together. So I could daisy chain port and detached, as long as they don't have things after them. But in this case, let's not complicate it. Let's keep them separate. Port 8080, D for detached, name, Abe's Nginx. Now when I look at Docker run or Docker PS, now I can see it running. I can see the image, and I can see over here. Now it's got an actual name that makes a little bit of sense. So that's Docker run, port 8080, name, Nginx, and then a container available from Docker Hub. Or one of the other containers. You know, you can configure more repositories in Docker. But for now, that's one of the ones available in Docker Hub, and that's what we're running. I'll go to it one more time. So on my browser outside of this, I'm just going localhost, port 80. And notice that you don't see the logs this time. So I didn't run that last command. Docker PS, you can see it there. But I'm going to it, and you're not seeing, I'm refreshing, you're not seeing it. What if I want to see what's happening on the console? Docker logs, and I can do this or my name. So I can either do enough of the letters, or I can use my name again. Abe's Nginx. So there we go. What that's going to do is print a bunch of the logs. If you want to watch them live, and again, this is a very useful one to know, -F, and now it's going to follow it. So it's going to be there. Now it's live as I'm refreshing on the other screen, and I'll cancel out of that. Now canceling out of this time is canceling out of monitoring the logs, not canceling out of the container. The container is still running. I still have a server in the background hosting Nginx. And when you go to it, it says, hey, this is a default Nginx page. Fantastic. All right, let's get a little more interesting. All right, I promised you'd get a little more tricky. We're going to go on to something else now. Watch this. Docker run. I'm going to run what's called Alpine Linux. It's basically the smallest variant of Linux, specifically built for containers. So if I can run Docker run Alpine Linux, it's going to download Linux, install it, run it, and that's all it did. See how it's not even running anymore? It ran Alpine Linux. Here's what you do with it. Alpine, and then you follow it up with what you want to do afterwards. So then you do, let's say, shell, or like sometimes it would be bash. I don't think it has bash based into it. Shell, run the command, echo, hello, students from the future. That's what it did. So it followed that along. It ran the container. Inside the container, it launched the shell with the command, hello, students from the future. Now there's one more, so if we wanted to map ports to that, we could map ports to that. Now this Linux isn't going to do anything with those ports mapped, but one of the things that's also really important to learn is environment variables. So I'm going to run here. Let's do a new command here, or a new screen. So hello, students from the future. Instead, what I want to do, I want to send it an environment variable. This is usually a password or a location for something you want inside the container. And this is something I wish I learned way, way earlier on in my world of Dockering. So in environment variables are often how we can just basically tattoo a configuration inside of a container. But in this case, I'm going to use it for a demo. So let's try this. Docker run environment variable of foobar environment variable. And then I'm going to run Alpine. And after I run Alpine, the shell, the command, let's just echo that environment variable. Foobar env variable, and see what happens. It's an empty variable, so let's see what happens. Well, it's empty. Cool. Let's make it equal stuff and stuff. You see what's happening here? So I've assigned an environment variable, stuff and stuff, to equal that. You know how this is going to go in production? It's going to be more like password, or better yet, API key. So it's going to be an API key where I put it in there, and then something in my container is going to want that API key. API key. And so now my API key is stuff and stuff. Now, of course, it's not going to actually be stuff and stuff for an API key. It'll be blah, blah, blah. But the moral of the story is I've passed this variable from my command line to inside my container. And like I said, a lot of times that's going to be configurations, time zones, users, storage directories. A lot of times it'll be passwords and credentials. We'll get into how to do credentials a little bit more, because if this was actually a credential, I'd have just typed it on the command line and showed it to all of you in a video. So we can typically handle those in a lot better ways. But to get the point across, you can run an environment variable and then see that inside of a container. All right, we're going to get more interesting now. All right, let's get a little more interesting now. We have moved on from Docker run and all this nonsense on the command line, which is good and has its spot for simple, beautiful things. Let's see what we still have running. We still have our Nginx console running. Let's stop that actually. Docker stop, what do we call it? Abe's Nginx. Perfect. So Docker PS is empty. Awesome. What we're going to do now, oh, look at that auto type. Now we're going to make, what did I call it? Abe serve. Use the tab button, Abe server. And it's going to be image Nginx latest. Sure, container name Abe server. Sure, ports. In fact, let's just stick to 80 and 80. And with that, I now have a Docker compose file. It's right in this directory. Let's flip up here so you can see it. It's right in the directory that I'm in. If I go here, you can see it. Oh, no, it's not. It's in this directory. So Docker compose. One more time, Docker compose. You can see it's in there. What we do here, instead of Docker run, Docker compose up. Now, I don't need to demonstrate it both times. Docker compose up is going to do it, but it's going to steal my focus for the shell, and it's going to show me the Nginx server as if I ran it in my server. I'm going to run detached just like the other one too. Docker compose up, detached. So it used this file that was properly formatted, partially thanks to VS Code and recognizing that it's all Docker. I didn't do anything for that, it just did it. Docker PS, there, we could see it running. And so we saw it not running before, we can see it running now. Curl localhost 80, and there you can see, if you see this page, Nginx is successfully configured. We have a web server running. This is where you start getting really, really powerful. So a lot of the other stuff you're going to do today, and a lot of the other stuff you're going to do in the lab, I want you to look up the documentation, I want you to learn it, I want you to go through it. But when you get to something like volumes, it's going to be local, the container mode. So I'm in this folder here. So let's just go /nginx data, and that's going to map to user share nginx HTML. Sure, and make it read only. I'm going to completely overwrite my my HTML file in there. So that means in the container user share nginx HTML, I'm going to pass it the nginx data folder. Since it's running right now, here's one more ninja trick. Since it's running right now, we've got it called Abe server, docker exec. This is one of the last ones that I wish I knew as well. Docker exec, there's a whole bunch of other commands. You can go read them all if you want. The two flags you want to pass it are I and T, interactive and something else. And then which container you're running. In this case, it's Abe server, I forgot the name already. Abe server, and then what command you want to run. Today we're going to run bash. So I'm now sitting inside, I've bashed, I'm sitting inside the shell of this container. So you can see all these extra files. These are not on my desktop, these are on this, they're inside this root container. So user share HTML, I think is where it is. User share, no. CD user share, where is it? www maybe? Whatever. You can look around the files. So this is how you interact with a container. So one more time, that's docker exec it, the name of the container and the command you want to run. So if I wanted to run shell instead of bash, shell's a lot harder to work in unless you really know it, but I'm now in the same shell. Notice how it's a different prompt and everything, but Nginx, the Nginx container has both because cranky people like me can't learn new things. So we have the Nginx container on the inside, and that's how you connect to the inside of it. No matter how you ran it, whether you ran it with compose or whether you run it with run, interacting with it is very similar. There are several more aspects. So there's volumes. So if I were to map this folder here, that would overwrite that folder. Oh, user share Nginx. That's where it is. Let's go in there. Let's go in there and take a look. cd user share Nginx HTML. So if I look at this file, oops. If I look at this file, that's the default file. Can I edit it? Don't have Vim. Do I have VI? Don't have VI. Do I have Nano? No. I'm going to echo HTML H1. I broke it, and H1 and HTML to index.html. Exit. Now, if I cat localhost, or wait, what do I have? Curl localhost 80. I've now modified the file inside that container. Let's go one step further. I'm going to make dir, I'm going to make one, what did I call it? Nginx new HTML. So I'm going to make a folder. Remember, don't lose track of where I am. See the Windows directory? Don't lose track of where I am. That's now made a new folder called Nginx new HTML. I'm going to go in there, make a new file, call it index.html. I have control locally over a container. And I'm going to save that. So I want this folder, Nginx new HTML. Let's go back to our Docker Compose. Nginx, what do I call it? Local is new HTML, and we're going to overwrite that folder. So remember, host, relative path, host, mapping over the remote container. All right, let's run this. Oh, it's Docker PS, Docker stop D355, clear, Docker PS. Do I have anything running? Nope, no I don't. All right, Docker Compose up in the background. All right, it started my Nginx container. Now if I curl localhost port 80, so I'm curling my host's port 80, which is mapped to the container's port 80, it should serve the contents of this folder now, which is right here, because it's taken over that folder. I have control locally over a container. I can change this. I have control masterfully over a container. So the container is running the web server, and all I've done is map this one folder to take over. This is all the stuff I wish I knew when I did Docker the first time around. Now, there are two more aspects to this. This is a service running abeserve. I've given some of the stuff. This is all very clearly documented in the Docker docs, what features and options you have here. On top of that, if you were to go browse the internet right now and look up, how do I run a Docker container for WordPress? How do I run a Docker container for any of these other platforms? You're going to learn this kind of stuff. So in roughly 10 minutes, these are the most fundamental things about Docker. Mapping your ports. Local, my laptop's port maps to the container's port. Volumes. My local volume maps to the volume inside the container. Inside the container. It's not a shared folder. This one now has taken over that inside of the container. When you get into environment variables, it's very similar. Password equals Unicorn Slayer. Slayer 99. So I now have an environment variable of password is Unicron Slayer 999999. I have control of master. This might not work in HTML. Well, we'll try it. Password. That's not going to work in the HTML. Well, anyways, this platform now, this Nginx server now has access to that password if I wanted to set a password. So if my HTML needed a password and I had written an entire script, Abe script that totally works, password equals get password from environment variable password, something like that. Yes, and if I wrote this script that totally worked, I could now call the password that the container is aware of. But a moral of the story is environment variables go into a password like that. Let's put this into action. Let's put this into something a little cooler. I am going to take the lowest configuration possible for a WordPress instance. So we want to run an entire this used to be a big, complicated thing to do. So what do you want my WordPress platform to be? What's my root password? Super secret password. Oh, look at even new. The database called WordPress, WordPress user, WordPress version, super secret password. Now, this is getting into volumes. Notice how that's not a full path. It doesn't start with a slash or a dot. So that's getting into a volume. It's declared a volume. That's the last thing I wanted to show you. The one most annoying thing about Docker is the fact that volumes, as this is called a bind mount, volumes in the bind mount have the same name as volumes the configuration. But I can then go and set a whole bunch of settings about this volume and how it works. Likewise, I can do the exact same thing with networks. And I can set a whole bunch of features about how networks work. Some of this is in the learning material, some of it's in the assignments. But with this volumes right here, with this as it's written, this is going to run a database of MySQL version 8. It's going to use this volume. It's going to manage it, so it's not going to be right here in my folder. It's going to be hidden, buried away in the Docker world, but it is on my laptop's hard drive. It's just hidden away wherever Docker's configured to store that stuff. Then it's going to run the WordPress on port 80. It's going to map this user, this database. It's going to run all of this, and then this most important volume right here, WP content, mapped to that WP content, which is going to be the website that it runs on. And if I were to run all of this, oops, wrong keys. Docker PS, do I have anything running now? Okay, Docker stop Abe server. We'll save this compose file, clear it all, Docker compose upd. So this is now running this compose file. It's downloading everything you need to do. It's downloading and configuring SQL. It's downloading the web front end. It's downloading all of it. This is several hundred megs, but I can just guarantee you this is going to work. This is going to then pop up a WordPress page I could configure, I can use, and I could run. All in production. So this is Compose. You've now seen Docker running on the command line. You now see Docker Compose. You've seen port mappings. You've seen files and bind mounts. Hopefully that clears up nearly all of the issues. Oh, and environment variables. Hopefully that clears up nearly all of the issues you have or may have with Docker. Have fun on the assignment. Thank you.